This is Bill Newman, WHMP.
Welcome to NPR, Northampton Poetry Radio, with erstwhile Poet Laureate Rich Michelson.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. You know, living in Western Massachusetts is both a blessing and a curse today, as it often is, as life often is. A blessing because we are surrounded by so many world-renowned poets, the best of the best, often live here and work here. A curse because sometimes they're reading at the same time and you have to decide where to go. So tonight, okay, if you're not at a poetry reading tonight, I want to see the note from your doctor, because we have two amazing poets on the show. We have two readings tonight. We have Magdalena Gomez, who is the Springfield Poet Laureate, and we'll have her in a moment. And we have Paul Mariani, one of the most respected, well-known poets this country has ever produced. They are both reading this evening. Magdalena is reading at 7 o'clock tonight, the first in-person event for Straw Dog Writers Night Out, the Western Mass Writers Guild. She is reading at, what does this say, a place called R. Michelson Galleries in Northampton, Massachusetts. I've heard of it. I think I've been there every day for the last 41 years of my life. It says here, I'm reading from the press release, the Michelson Gallery is donating 20% of all purchases on, really? Hey, I don't know, I got to talk to my staff, to any Straw Dog Writers Guild for their annual fundraiser. If you are thinking of buying art from Michelson's, June 7th is the time. That's what it says. I guess it's too late for me to take that back. And now we are going to turn to Paul Mariani, one of my dearest friends. When I moved to this area in 1979, the first person I met was a young visual artist by the name of Barry Mosier. And I went to his studio, and he showed me some engravings he was working on for a young poet, or had just finished, for a first book called Timing Devices. I fell in love with the book, and later fell in love with the man who has been a mentor and a friend to me and so many other poets in this valley, Paul Mariani. He has a brand new book out, brand new. It is called All That Will Be New. It is from Slant Books, I think one of the best new literary publishers this country has seen. I would say that even if they were not publishing my next book. But in fact, I think I told you that before they took it. I was just amazed. They did your last book as well, Ordinary Time. Paul is the preeminent biographer of poets of our time: William Carlos Williams, Gerard Manley Hopkins, Hart Crane, Wallace Stevens, John Berryman. If you want to know about poetry, you go to Paul's books. In some ways, however, I think because you've been such a prominent biographer, that sometimes your poetry has gotten overlooked. I'm glad to see that in the last couple of years, you are enjoying a late flowering of work, 2 books in 3 years, 2 years, both in Slant Books. It's great to see that, Paul. You're like back to poetry every day now?
That's right, every day, yeah.
Closer. This book was written really during the pandemic days, right? You
That's
were
correct,
home,
Rich.
and
Yeah, I made a vow, in a sense, for January. I said I'm going to write one line of poetry a day, and of course, one sometimes turns to 2 to 4 to 8, etc. So that many of these poems were written during the COVID period, from January 1st until about March 15th. Yeah. And it just blossomed for me. I mean, I've never gotten this many poems done as quickly as this. Yeah.
I thought it was amazing. It's one of my favorite books. I want to tell people that you will be reading tonight as well in Montague. 34 Main Street, Montague's Common Hall, at 7:15. You will be introduced by our dear friend
Yes,
and
Martine.
poet and National Book Award winner, Martina Spada,
Yes.
who is, I think, our most frequent guest on this show, almost a co-host. I think it's going to be an incredible reading for folks. I'd like to start out with a poem. I
Sure.
want people to hear your voice. So
Okay.
let's start
Yes.
with maybe a local hero.
You know, it's funny, when Eileen and I got married on our honeymoon, we came up to Amherst so that I could visit Emily Dickinson's home. I mean, it goes back that far, you know, this love of Emily Dickinson, who's just a genius. She just continues to wow me.
All right.
So
And
one
the love of
poems-
Eileen, too. Let's put that in there. You guys are a great couple.
So there's a poem here that I wrote using her forms, the ballad form, the hymnal form. It's called Emily Waves from a Bedroom Window as We Pass By. And I have to tell you how many times I've driven down that street looking at that window, you know. The drumbeat of your church hymn form, your 4/3s riffling on, those ghosts beneath your evergreens, gathering as the sun goes down. I felt a funeral in my brain, you sighed, full knowing well, what were the deaths of A and B, that soon the bell would have to knell for you as well, across the land of goldenrod and rose, as now those gentian flocks perk up and tilt their parasols, and shadows gather once again across that open field, all headed for the burial ground where secrets must stay sealed. Yes, once again, we mourn your loss, as now we follow after, hoping to learn as time treads on the courage of your laughter.
That's Paul Mariani, who will be reading from his book, All That Will Be New, tonight, 34 Main Street, Montague's Common Hall, introduced by our friend Martina Spada. So just like Magdalena, when we were talking about, and she was saying how important these poets were to her in her development, your book is filled with homages to the
Yes.
great poets of the past, and the most recent past as well, your dear friend Phil Levine,
Yes.
Robert Pack.
Yes.
A lot of writers are, you're both celebrating them, commemorating them, mourning them.
Yeah.
So much of that. And I noticed there's also a lot of spiritual yearning, in a sense, moving
Yes.
towards death, if I dare say it, in this book.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, I know that in the past, when we think of the great artists, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and the great writers like Dante, you have a poem that mimics Dante's style.
Yes, the
that,
Tartarima, yeah.
in this, which I thought was just an amazingly moving poem. These are poets who are dealing with faith and wrestling with it.
Yes.
How does it? I know you are, have a very strong, very strong faith. Maybe you want to talk about it a little bit. How does it inform this work, poetry, faith? How does it come together? A lot of these poems are prayers and a real wrestling with.
Yeah, that seems to be, for me, it's the central issue, the central question. What's the meaning of life? Where are we going? Where are we headed? Is this a journey? And if it's a journey, where is it headed to? In that poem that you mentioned, Dante, my beloved mentor, Alan Mandelbaum, who was a translator of Dante and Ovid and others, but he becomes my guide through the underworld as I meet each of the poets that that I spent 40 years writing biographies about, and now I speak to them again towards the end of my own journey. But yes, I think one of the images that I keep coming back to is the breaking of the bread, just the sense of a meal coming together. Now, from my own perspective as a Catholic writer, this breaking of the bread is the communion that we, to share. And that's been, I think, something very important to my shaping. My oldest son, for example, is a Jesuit priest who teaches Chinese out in Santa Clara. But again and again, there's humor, there's tragedy, and a sense, how do I anchor it? Where does it go for me? So there's a lot of darkness in here, too. There's a lot of COVID poems. There's one about that mad, forgive me, that former president.
We just beeped you. That's all.
It just drives me crazy, if I'm allowed to say that, for the way he handled things. But, there's all this going on. I mean, there's Ukraine now, et cetera. Each day I wake up and, there's, oh boy, Uvalde, et cetera. How do I deal with these things? How do you articulate it, Rich? Yeah.
Well, I think, I think you have reached the stage in life, Paul, where we have a lot to learn from you. I think that the poem that you just mentioned is one of the great poems in English that I've read. I think it's wonderful. It's great to have it in this book. I would have loved to have had you read it here. Maybe Bill will invite us back and give us the whole show. It's a long poem.
2 days.
But we'll do that. But tonight you can hear Paul in Montague at 34 Main Street. And I just want to say, because I know a lot of you are, are now like renting just in, where do I go? How do I, hear all these wonderful things? I do want to say that you can also hear Paul Mariani read on June 14th over Zoom at 8 p.m. Again, he will be with our National Book Award winner, Martina Spada. If you go to Slant Books, and here you read your Emily poem. I don't have to explain to people in this neighborhood how Slant Books got its name. We're going to leave it at that.
Right, exactly.
We've got Emily. That's how we're going to tell it. If you go to
Tell it
Slant Books,
yeah.
you will have a link to hear you June 14th at Zoom. And to be fair, I also want to say that if you want to hear Magdalena Gomez and you can't make it tonight because you're going to Paul Mariani, she will be reading June 9th, Thursday, June 9th at the Brightlit branch of Springfield Library. And so you'll both have a second chance.
Tell us one more time tonight's readings, please.
Tonight, 34 Main Street, Paul Mariani, Montague Common Hall at 7:15. And tonight, Magdalena Gomez, 7 to 9 for the Straw Dogs Writers Night Out at R. Michelson Galleries, 132 Main Street, the center of Northampton. We are blessed. We are truly blessed. Words matter. Poetry matters. We've got some of the best here. Paul, you have been a friend, a mentor. I thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
And I hope everybody will pick up this book. All that will be new, Slant Books. It's available. Get it. You will not be disappointed.
Thank you.
Rich Michelson, Paul Mariani, thank you both so very, very much.